Yeah. So I think after this, sorry, family members.
You're next to one of Vanessa's family members. Just cover their eyes.
I included some diary comics that are more like one-offs, and some of them are kind of funny. This one is sort of a glib kind of thing where this guy is asking why I don't want to get completely nude, and I say, well, yeah, anyway. He's like, oh, I thought it's just that you don't sleep with a man on the first date, and I'm like, oh, is this a date? Doesn't really seem like dinner and movie, but... And then this one's also just a funny one where my friend Karen and I try to figure out which is a more disgusting purchase, condoms and tofu or toilet paper in an O. Henry bar. Sometimes you just find yourself at the drugstore and you just need roach spray and, like, you know, I don't know, something else embarrassing.
What I like about your little one-offs like this is, like, sometimes with other artists, it's just like this little moment of pretension in between more narrative stuff. Yeah. And with you, everything has value.
Oh, wow, that's a big compliment. And this one is sort of a fun... the top one is nothing... I don't know, it's just sort of... the bottom one was the one I wanted to show. It has me and my sister, and we're talking about the tsunami that happened in 2004. And, you know, we're just kind of making small talk, and, you know, we're just talking about, like, the magnitude of the tragedy of the tsunami and how, I say, they're expecting that the death toll is going to rise due to flooding and disease. And Ariella says, well, that's not a very positive attitude.
Which really says so much about your relationship.
About all of, you know, I don't know. It says a lot about us all.
Yes.
And then this one is, this one's just kind of a infantile party moment, where me and my girls are ripping it up. I don't know. It's like, but when I moved to Santa Rosa in 2005, and from here I lived in Brooklyn, and I found myself in a new community of friends, and like really a different world. Like, a lot of my friends were younger than me. They had a very different lifestyle. I had gone from a place where I had a fairly serious job, you know, full-time job at the Folk Art Museum here, which seemed very respectable, and then I moved to Santa Rosa, and, you know, I worked as a secretary at the junior college, which was fine, but it was just, my community was a lot different than it was in New York, and I just found myself in very different social situations, and I was interested in recording them, so this is one of them. And then this one's one about my boyfriend, and I'm talking about how and this is when I was working on my first comic for tablet, which was a comic called Purim Palooza. And it was an idea that the tablet staff or a writer on tablet had come up with to do a punk feminist comic version of the story of Purim, which was really weird for me, and you know, it wasn't like something that I would just do on my own, and but at the same time I decided that it would be a good professional challenge and it would be a good creative challenge, and I put it together and it was really fun. But anyway, so while I was working on it, I was thinking about Purim, which is sort of something that ended up happening while I was working on a lot of these Jewish themed stories for tablet. Is, you know, I always sort of took Judaism for granted. I never thought it was something that I would want to write about. I just thought it was completely boring, you know, about me. Like, it was just not a distinctive thing about me, because I lived in New York and South Florida, and everyone I knew was Jewish. Like, who cares?
Right. But, and in New York, even the non-Jews are Jewish.
Right. And, exactly. And so, anyway, so here I am. I'm working on this Purim comic, and I'm just thinking about Purim, and I'm telling Trevor all about how much Purim is fun, and how it's like this fun holiday where you know, and you eat hamantashen, and he was like, what's a hamantashen? So I say, you know, oh, they're these delicious cookies, they're made out of like shortbread, and you know, they're filled with jam or poppy seeds, and he says, ugh, that sounds like more gross Jewish food. And Trevor's a very nice boy. He's like a very supportive boyfriend. But it's like this joke between us about how, like, you know, he'll always ask me about some Jewish holiday and, like, what you have to do. And I say, oh, well, you, like, clean out your toaster with a feather and you sell your loaf of bread to your neighbor for $1. And he's just like, what are you talking about? And it's funny because I just never even thought about those things as weird or absurd, but they are when you think about it in a way. So then anyway, he acts like Hamantashen are gross, but that's his loss, as we all know. And then by the end of it, he's like, chuckling and laughing it up to the first part 1 of 2 of this like 500-page Hitler biography that he got really into. So, and I'm mad. Oh, and this is a story about the high holidays.
Right. So we should say you went to Jewish day school in Florida.
I did.
And then you had this experience of going out into sort of the wider world. And and I really don't, it seems like when so you went to Jewish day school, you're, with your Jew family, you go to, New York. And then when you get to Santa Rosa, there's this, it seems like you have a lot of, what is being, and I'm sure doing the work for Tablet was a catalyst for this. But wait, now I have to examine, now that I'm not in a Jewish community,
right,
what does being Jewish mean to me?
Yeah, and it's weird because I've never really, I always was able to I never had to do anything. Judaism was just around me, like there were always break fasts to go to, and if I was home, I had to go to temple on high holidays. It just wasn't a question, and it just was there, like, and I never wanted to do anything. So, so then when I was out in California, not wanting to do anything without anyone to do it with me and nobody doing it for me, I definitely noticed its absence, which was fine, but also sad in a way. Like there's sort of just a lack of Jewish culture it's not like I really want, everyone's like, well, just join the synagogue, which is not what I want to do. I don't really want to go to temple. I just want to be able to find a black and white, or, or like, have some like respectable old people that I can talk to. Because it's like most of the people I find out in Santa Rosa are like these, like they're like, they're like 70-year-old hippies that, not that Jewish people aren't hippies, but like, it's just different. So, so it's funny because it became this thing that I've sort of started to yearn for and miss. And it's definitely, working for Tablet was a catalyst, but it's something that I really wrestle with because I also am getting older. I'm in a serious relationship with a non-Jewish boy. So it's just something that I'm sort of figuring out at this stage in my life. And it's, it's definitely kind of coming to the forefront, living in this place where, there isn't much of it. So in this story, I talk about, I had to do a story for the high holidays, and Tablet, being the, open-minded, terrific, broad-minded magazine that it is, let me do a thing about how much I don't like the high holidays. And so I just talk about how much I dread going, I hate, it's just no fun thinking about possibly not being written in the book of life, and not really having any control over that whatsoever, and just praying all day, and, and then I talk about when I went off to college, how I had to sort of figure out whether I was going to do this stuff without, being home at my parents' or going to my family's synagogue. And then I do talk about how I became sort of superstitious about it because, it's like there is so much tied up in Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur about death, whether or not you'll be written in the book of life, and if you die, how you're going to die. And it's just really freaky. And then the first year that I didn't do anything, my dad died. And so even though that had nothing to do with anything religious, I'm sure, I think, no, I don't know. I just talk about how I started to, kind of then turn it into this sort of superstitious thing. And it actually had nothing to do with religion, and just sort of how much any of that stuff has to do with religion, or whether it has to, I don't know. So I just was thinking about those things. And here I tell my mom that I don't need to go to temple for Yom Kippur because every day of my life is the Day of Atonement, which I don't really believe. But yeah, and I talk about being in Santa Rosa and just sort of figuring out how how I navigate the Jewish holidays out in the wilderness. There's totally Jewish people in Santa Rosa. I just don't know them.
I wonder about these, a lot of your stories. Things don't well, we're going to get to one in which things do happen, but they're these very reflective little moment in time things with lots of words, and yet to me they feel so full. And I wonder whether you think that you have a lot of words for compared to some other comic artists, and I wonder whether you think that autobiographical comics, especially sort of internal ones, do they not get the, do you think they do get respect? Do they not? Who are the lady voices that you like and that you sort of see as role models?
Well, there are. I think that what's interesting, it's sort of like, maybe it's because I'm a child of the 90s with Seinfeld, and they had this whole show that was about nothing. It's like, there's a lot that can happen in life that's not plot-driven. You don't have, like, some people are, they write interesting autobiography because they've had a crazy life where they were, their father was a serial killer, and they were, I don't know, all kinds of things. And for me, it's like, I'm not very old. I haven't, like, done anything that extraordinary, but I still have a lot of ideas and things that I want to say and hear and talk about with people. It's like, it's almost kind of a way of putting it out there to try to get some response, to try to figure it out as I'm going along. And so I know that is my motivation behind autobio, and I think that more people are doing that. When I first started doing comics and I lived here in New York, I was friends with mostly the first cartoonists I was spending time with were women, and a lot of them were doing autobio, and and they still remain kind of my really formative. I read the Twisted Sisters anthology when I was in high school, but that was way before I ever thought I'd do comics, and I loved like Debbie Drexler and Aileen Kaminsky and and I read Julie Doucet, which I totally found out about because of Sassy, and and I liked those things, and they stuck with me. And there were a lot of other artists too that did autobio work that weren't cartoonists necessarily, but it just was something that kind of stayed. And then, I'm sort of going in all directions.
Okay,
but
my question was in all directions.
But yeah, I'm excited by all of the autobio cartoonists that are working now, and I really get a lot. I feel like my friend Gabrielle Bell, she's a autobio cartoonist. She and I have very different personalities, and our comics are very different, but I sort of feel like we are kind of doing the same, like a similar thing, just kind of at different ends of some kind of spectrum, or, what's interesting is that I almost feel like now that comics can kind of be so varied and diverse, it's almost like every individual artist is like their own genre in a way, like, because my comics are nothing like Gabrielle's, but we're both autobio cartoonists, and so I don't know. So yeah. There's just a huge variety.
You also said before we started that you thought Sassy was more of an influence on your work than any particular cartoonist.
Well,
what do you mean by that? I
guess just, my sister subscribed to Sassy since 1988, and I've been reading it since I was 10, and, it just was a...
Sorry.
No, I'm sorry. I was 10, I can't help it.
Okay. No, that was an unelderly face.
No,
so it's okay.
I was mature for my age.
Right.
It's just the maturity stopped, and then I just got immature.
Anyway,
it's, and it just was, it was like, it was the voice of a generation. It was like this important magazine for us. It was cynical, it was sarcastic, it was all these things that real teenagers really were, and but it was also creative and exuberant and motivating and inspiring. It wasn't like negative, and so I think that Sassy, I don't know that Sassy specifically influenced my comics as much as it influenced my personality. Like it gave girls of that age like a lot of confidence to be themselves, because you looked at the magazine and there were all these cool older girls being themselves and being amazing and running around going to Cine and all kinds of cool New York places and stuff. So, it was exciting. So I think that I'm definitely of the Sassy generation, and that, there's so many people that I think we're like the same kind of girl, thoughtful and, literary and etc. Sorry, go on. Babbling.
Not that.
Okay, and this comic is called Wild Ride.